He raised a toast to the person who would kill him. Welcome to Mystery Case. I am your host, Detective Echo. Tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing you here. Let's begin. If you want to measure how badly a day is going, don't use the weather. Use Nero Wolfe's orchids. At 11:15, Fritz came down from the plant rooms with a face that said the flowers had been insulted. When Wolfe's orchids were upset, the brownstone itself seemed touchy. I was at my desk when the bell rang, but Fritz glanced at the clock and then at me as if I had personally invited trouble. "It is not a delivery," he murmured. "Then it's mine," I said, and went to the hall. The man on the stoop was neat in the way men get neat when they're afraid of looking desperate. Grey suit, careful tie, shoes too polished for February slush. He held his hat in both hands like it was fragile. Mid-40s, close-shaved, eyes that tried to meet mine and then slid away. "I'm here to see Mr. Wolfe," he said. "That's a popular hobby. Name? Harold Vane. Appointment? No, but this is important. Important is common." I started to close the door. His hand shot out and stopped it, not pushing, just bracing. "Please, I can pay." So could most of the people we turned away. Still, there was something about him, panic with a thin layer of manners, that hooked my curiosity. "State your emergency in 10 words, I said. He took a breath. "Someone is going to kill me today, in your house." That was 11 words, but I let it slide. I brought him into the front room and offered a chair. He perched on it like it might explode. I phoned upstairs. "Wolfe, there's a gentleman here named Harold Vane. Claims he's due to be murdered today, possibly on our premises." A pause. Contempt, then the faint click of interest. "Send him up," Wolfe said. "And yourself." I steered Vane to the elevator, but in Wolfe's office the red leather chair held its usual monarch, immovable behind the desk. Wolfe gave Vane the same inspection he gave new orchids. Cool, appraising, ready to discard anything wilted. "Mr. Vane, sit," Wolfe said. Vane sat on the edge of the chair opposite, hat glued to his knees. "You have announced an intention to die in my house," Wolfe said. "That is an impertinence." "Explain." "I'm trying to stop it," Vane whispered. "How did you arrive at this conviction?" Wolfe asked. "Because I heard them. 2 men, last night, in my office." "What office?" I asked. "Vane Importing, West 37th. He swallowed. "I stayed late. There's a storeroom behind my desk. I was hiding." "Hiding from whom?" I asked. "My partner," he said, and looked like he hated the word. Wolfe's eyelids lowered a fraction. "Continue." I heard voices in the hall. They didn't know I was there. One said, "He'll toast it himself like a fool." The other laughed and said, "Let him. It makes it cleaner." Then the first said, "In Wolfe's place, he trusts his habits." That last line landed hard. Wolfe's habits were his true religion. His timetable had the solidity of masonry. Wolfe's fingers came together. "You assume he refers to you." "It does," Vane said. "They mentioned my luncheon, the one I never miss. They said I'd raise a glass. Toast my own killer, they said, like it was funny." "Your luncheon is where?" Wolfe asked. "At the Caledonia Club," Vane replied. "Say business circle, speeches, toasters." "Poison is not a toast," I said. Vane flinched. "I don't drink much, only what they pour." Wolfe's gaze stayed on him. "Why do you come to me rather than the police?" Vane let out a laugh that had no humor in it. "Because if I tell the police I hid in a storeroom to spy on my partner, they'll ask why. If they ask why, I'll have to tell them what I took. Then I'll be arrested or ruined." There it was. The real leverage. I watched Wolfe's face for the tell, because there is always a tell when he decides to be bothered. It wasn't sympathy. Wolfe keeps that in a drawer and rarely opens it. It was a fence. Someone had spoken his name as if it were a convenient address, and that was enough to turn his mind from orchids to men in a hurry today. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You have brought your anxiety into my home. That alone is costly. What precisely do you want? I want to live through tonight, Vane said. I want to know who said those words, and I want it done quietly. Wolfe's eyes shifted briefly toward the curtained window, then returned to Vane, sharp and still. Very well, Wolfe said. We will proceed on one condition. You will not leave this house until I permit it. Vane blinked, but my club luncheon. If you are to toast anyone, Wolfe said, it will be to your continued respiration. Archie, take his hat. Fritz will bring coffee. Then you will tell me, Mr. Vane, that's why a man would arrange to be killed in my house. I took the hat from Vane's hands. It was damp with sweat, and it felt, absurdly, like evidence. Fritz delivered coffee with the solemnity of a man serving communion, and Vane accepted the cup as if it might detonate. Wolfe waited until the door closed before speaking again. You will begin, Wolfe said, with the theft you prefer not to discuss. Vane stared into the coffee. It isn't theft. Not exactly. Language is a tool, Wolfe murmured. Use it honestly. Vane exhaled. 3 weeks ago, I removed a document from our company safe, a contract draft. It concerned a private acquisition, artifacts from a Baltic estate. My partner, Leonard Dykes, wanted to move them quietly through a third party. I thought the arrangement reckless, possibly illegal. You removed it to prevent the transaction, I asked. I removed it to examine it, to see who else was involved. He hesitated. And to protect myself. From what? Wolfe's tone was almost bored, which meant he was alert. Dykes has been impatient, aggressive. He thinks I lack nerve. If something goes wrong, I'd be the one presented as the cautious fool who failed to act. So you hid in a storeroom to spy on your own office, I said. That's not cautious. That's theatrical. He shot me a look. You don't know, Leonard. Wolfe's fingers drummed once on the desk blotter. Names. The 2 voices. I'm certain one was Dykes. The other, I believe it was Peter Rudd. Role, Wolfe asked. Financial advisor. Not officially attached to Vane Importing, but he handles Dykes's private investments. And you trust your ear? Wolfe asked. Yes. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly. You heard the phrase in Wolfe's place. That is not a casual expression. It implies familiarity. How many times have you been in this house, Mr. Vane? Twice, years ago. A dispute over shipping insurance. Public record, I said. Nothing confidential. Vane nodded quickly. Exactly. That's why it startled me. I haven't mentioned you to Dykes in years. Wolfe opened his eyes. Who arranged the Caledonia luncheon? Dykes. It's an annual affair. He insisted I deliver the principal toast this year. To new ventures, he said. And you accepted, I said. It would have been conspicuous not to. Wolfe regarded him. You believe poison will be introduced into your glass at the club? Yes. Why not at your office? Or your home? Wolfe asked. Because they said I'd toast it myself. At the club I always rise, take the glass handed to me by the steward and drink before speaking. Predictable ritual, I said. Exactly. Wolfe shifted in his chair, a minor earthquake. You will not attend. Vane's head jerked up. But if I don't, they'll know I heard them. Let them suspect, Wolfe said. Suspicion is not proof. Death is. Vane pressed his lips together. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, you will telephone Mr. Saul Panzer. Instruct him to observe the Caledonia Club luncheon. Particular attention to Leonard Dykes and Peter Rudd. He is to note who approaches the steward's station and who handles the decanters. I moved to the phone. And Archie, Wolfe added. You will also arrange for a modest deception. I paused. Define modest. You will inform Mr. Dykes that Mr. Vane has accepted a last-minute consultation here regarding the Baltic acquisition and will be detained until evening. That puts our address in play, I said. It already is, Wolfe replied, if the phrase was not idle. I placed the calls. Saul answered on the second ring, agreed without fuss, and hung up before I could add color. Dykes's office transferred me twice before I reached the man himself. Leonard Dykes, he snapped. Archie Goodwin for Nero Wolfe. Mr. Vane is here and will not attend your luncheon. Mr. Wolfe requires clarification on a contractual point. A silence. Then, carefully. That's inconvenient. I'm sure it is. Tell Harold, Dykes said, that business cannot be postponed indefinitely. I'll pass along the sentiment. When I hung up, Wolfe was studying Vane as if he were an exhibit under glass. Mr. Vane, Wolfe said, describe your partner's temperament. Forceful, impatient, he believes in momentum. And Mr. Rudd. Cold, auto-analytical. He smiles when others argue. Wolfe nodded faintly. One supplies energy, the other, calculation. That sounds like conspiracy, I said. It sounds like commerce, Wolfe corrected. Vane shifted. If Saul sees something. If Mr. Panzer observes an attempt at poisoning, Wolfe said, we shall have evidence. If he does not, your fear may be misdirected. Misdirected? Vane's voice tightened. Wolfe leaned back. You assume the plot concerns a luncheon, yet the phrase you report contains two elements. He'll toast it himself, and in Wolfe's place. You have fixated on the first and ignored the second. Vane blinked. I felt the tickle of it too. You think the toast isn't at the club? I think, Wolfe said, that when men mention my house, it is rarely decorative. Vane's hand tightened on the coffee cup. You mean here? I mean, Wolfe said, that you have entered my home under the assumption that it is sanctuary. So that assumption may not be shared. The room seemed to contract. You required Mr. Vane to remain, I said slowly. Yes, because if someone expects him elsewhere, they may seek him here, Wolfe finished. Vane set the cup down with a click. But how? No one knew I was coming. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. You told no one. No one. Not even your secretary. Vane hesitated a fraction too long. Mrs. Colby, he said. I told her I had a private errand. And she is loyal? Wolfe asked. I've employed her 12 years. That was not my question. Vane swallowed. I believe so. Wolfe's eyes shifted to me. Archie, lock the front door. Admit no one without my authorization. Inform Fritz that no deliveries are to be accepted. You're expecting company? I asked. I'm expecting possibility, Wolfe said. As I rose, the brownstone felt different, less like a fortress and more like a stage with unseen entrances. The bell rang. It was not tentative. It was firm, deliberate, and precisely on the half hour, as if the visitor had consulted a schedule. I looked at Wolfe. He did not move. Archie, he said softly, let us discover who believes Mr. Harold Vane intends to toast his own killer in my office. I went to the hall with the feeling you get when you open a letter that might contain a check or a subpoena. The bell hadn't rung again. Whoever was on the stoop believed in patience. Through the one-way panel, I saw a tall man in a dark overcoat, his head angled with the precision of habit rather than vanity. His shoulders were square, his stance relaxed. He wasn't fidgeting, which told me he hadn't come to plead. I opened the door a cautious 6 inches. Yes. Leonard Dykes, he said. I believe you telephoned me. His voice was smooth, a shade deeper than Vane's, and entirely without strain. He held my gaze as if I were a contract he intended to revise. "That was quick," I said. "I was in the neighborhood." Of course he was. "Mister? Wolfe isn't receiving visitors," I told him. "I won't be long." His eyes shifted past me, measuring the hall. "I simply wish to speak to my partner." "Your partner is occupied." "With Nero Wolfe." A faint smile. "So I was told." He removed his gloves with unhurried fingers. He was a handsome man in the hard-edged way that photographs well in annual reports. Early 50s, silver just touching the temples. Control radiated off him like cologne. "Wait here," I said, and shut the door. And back upstairs. Vane was on his feet, color draining. "That was him, wasn't it?" "Yes," I said. "Your impatient partner." Wolfe did not appear surprised. "Admit him, Archie." "You're sure?" "I prefer my adversaries visible." I returned and opened the door fully. Dykes stepped inside without hesitation, as though he had been here before and approved of the upholstery. He followed me to the office, removing his hat only when he saw Wolfe behind the desk. His expression shifted a degree. Recognition and appraisal. Calculation. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, "it has been some time." "Mr. Dykes," Wolfe replied. "You arrive with commendable speed." I dislike uncertainty. His gaze moved to Vane. "Harold." Vane's mouth tightened. "Leonard." There are greetings that embrace and greetings that fence. This one built a wall. "You missed the luncheon," Dykes said mildly. Our associates were disappointed. "I had business," Vane answered. "With Mr. Wolfe?" Dykes's eyes flicked to me, then back. I was unaware our internal affairs required outside arbitration. Wolfe steepled his fingers. "They do not." Mr. Vane sought consultation. "On what matter?" Dykes asked. "On survival," I said. Dykes turned his head slightly. "I beg your pardon." "Mr. Vane believes someone intends him harm," Wolfe said. Silence expanded, thin and sharp. Dykes's eyebrows lifted. "That is absurd." "So I suggested," I said. Vane shot me a look. Dykes regarded his partner with what might have been concern, as if it had reached his eyes. "Harold, if this is about the Baltic transaction, it is about last night," Vane cut in. Dykes's expression did not change. "Last night?" "In the office," Vane said. "The storeroom." Something flickered, quick, almost imperceptible, across Dykes's face. Surprise? Irritation? It vanished before it settled. "You were in the office after hours?" Dykes asked evenly. "Yes." "Why?" Vane hesitated. "To review documents." "Without informing me." "It wasn't a question, and I didn't consider it necessary." Dykes turned back to Wolfe. "Mr. Wolfe, my partner has a tendency toward melodrama when stressed. Our firm is negotiating a sensitive acquisition. Tensions are natural." "And whispered conversations about toasts are natural as well?" Wolfe asked. Dykes's gaze sharpened. "I don't follow." Wolfe's tone remained flat. "Mr. Vane reports overhearing you state he'll toast it himself, like a fool." And another gentleman respond, "In Wolfe's place." For the first time, Dykes's composure cracked a hairline. "That is nonsense." "You deny the conversation?" Wolfe asked. "I deny any such implication. If Harold was skulking in a storeroom, he may have misinterpreted remarks taken out of context." "What context would render them innocent?" I asked. Dykes smiled thinly. "Business metaphors are often colorful." "Colorful enough to specify my address?" Wolfe inquired. Dykes's eyes met Wolfe's squarely. "So your address was not specified?" "Yet you are here," Wolfe observed. "I was told Harold was detained here regarding a contractual matter. I came to retrieve him." "You were told by whom?" Wolfe asked. "Your associate." He inclined his head toward me. Before that, Wolfe pressed. Dykes paused. By Mrs. Colby, Harold's secretary, informed my office that he had left abruptly for an urgent consultation. Vane stiffened. I told her nothing of where I was going. Nevertheless, Dykes said. Then she appeared well informed. The air shifted again. Wolfe's eyes closed for a brief moment, as if rearranging pieces on a board only he could see. You came alone? Wolfe asked. Yes. Without Mr. Rudd? Peter has no role in this, Dykes said. On the contrary, Wolfe murmured. He may have a substantial one. Dykes's jaw tightened. If this is an attempt to manufacture suspicion, I advise caution. My firm values its reputation. And I value my peace, Wolfe replied. It has been interrupted. Dykes turned to Vane. Harold, if you believe I would harm you, you are more unstable than I thought. Vane's hands trembled against the chair arms. I heard you. You heard fragments, Dykes said. Perhaps spoken in jest. About my death, Vane demanded. About risk, Dykes corrected. We were discussing exposure. He'll toast it himself, referred to you endorsing the acquisition publicly. You insisted on announcing it at the club. Vane blinked. No, that's not. You drafted the speech, Dykes said quietly. That landed. I glanced at Wolfe. His face was granite. Mr. Vane, Wolfe said softly, did you prepare remarks for the luncheon? Vane hesitated. Yes, but that... Then the phrase may possess dual meaning, Wolfe said. One commercial, one mortal. Dykes spread his hands slightly. There is no mortal meaning. And the reference to my house? Wolfe asked. Dykes's eyes cooled. If it was mentioned at all, it may have been in relation to seeking your counsel regarding insurance liability. Insurance, I said. That's romantic. Dykes ignored me. Mr. Wolfe, I suggest this misunderstanding end now. Harold, come with me. We will discuss this privately. No, Wolfe said. The word was quiet, but absolute. Dykes's gaze snapped back. On what authority? On mine, Wolfe replied. Mr. Vane remains here until I am satisfied no threat exists. And if I insist? Dykes asked. Wolfe's eyes opened fully, steady and unblinking. Then you will demonstrate a level of urgency inconsistent with innocence. The room went still enough to hear the radiator tick. Dykes held Wolfe's stare for 3 seconds, perhaps 4. Then he inclined his head. Very well, he said. Satisfy yourself, but I advise you to do so quickly. Speculation can be costly. He turned to leave. At the door he paused and looked back at Vane. Be careful what you imagine, Harold, he said. Our imagination has a way of fulfilling itself. The door closed behind him with a measured click. I exhaled. Vane sank into the chair. You see? Wolfe did not answer immediately. His gaze was fixed not on Vane but on the desk between them. Archie, he said at last, telephone Mrs. Colby. I wish to inquire how she learned of Mr. Vane's destination before Mr. Dykes did. I went to the phone on Wolfe's desk and dialed Vane Importing. The receptionist transferred me with professional cheer to Mrs. Colby. Her voice, when it came on, was steady and efficient. Mrs. Colby speaking. Archie Goodwin for Nero Wolfe. I'd like a word about Mr. Vane's schedule this morning. A fractional pause. Yes, Mr. Goodwin? Mr. Dykes informed us that you told his office Mr. Vane had come here. I did, she said. No flutter. No defensive edge. How did you know that? I asked. Mr. Vane said he had a private errand requiring discretion, she replied. He appeared agitated. When Mr. Dykes called asking his whereabouts, I inferred the destination. Inferred, I repeated. From what? From history. Mr. Vane has consulted Mr. Wolfe before during complications. Her tone was composed, but something about the phrasing pricked me. "Did Mr. Dykes ask specifically whether Mr. Vane had come here?" I said. "No. He asked where Mr. Vane might go in distress," I answered truthfully. "Did you mention the Caledonia luncheon?" "Yes. Mr. Dykes was surprised, Mr. Vane had not attended." "Was anyone else in your office when you spoke to him?" "No." "Has Mr. Rudd been in today?" Another slight pause. "Yes. Briefly." "Before or after Mr. Dykes called?" "Before." "Did you inform Mr. Rudd of Mr. Vane's departure?" "I did not volunteer it," she said. "But he asked whether Mr. Vane seemed unsettled." "And you said?" "That he did." I thanked her and hung up. Wolfe had not moved, but his eyes were sharper. "She is either admirably calm," I said, "or professionally rehearsed." "Both are possible," Wolfe murmured. "Report," I summarized. Vane listened as if each word were a pebble dropped into water he was already drowning in. "I never told her I was coming here," he insisted. "Only that I needed discretion." "You have been here twice before," Wolfe said. "That establishes precedent." "But why tell Leonard?" Vane demanded. "Because Leonard asked," I said. "And she's loyal to the firm." "Not necessarily to you." Wolfe's gaze remained on Vane. "Mr. Rudd visited before Mr. Dykes telephoned." "That is interesting." Vane's fingers twitched. "Peter dislikes uncertainty. He probes." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Archie, we must assume that by now both Mr. Dykes and Mr. Rudd know Mr. Vane is here. That makes this place less sanctuary and more target," I said. "Precisely." The bell rang again. This time it was shorter, sharper. 2 presses in quick succession. Vane flinched. I looked at Wolfe. "Archie," he said, "observe first." I went to the hall and checked the panel. A delivery boy stood there with a florist's box balanced on his hip. Late teens, cap crooked, impatience in his stance. The box bore the discreet stamp of a midtown florist I recognized. I opened the door a cautious span. "Delivery for Mr. Harold Vane," the boy said. "Signature required." "From whom?" "Cards inside, mister." "Who paid?" "Cash." I studied him. He looked as if the only crime he'd ever committed was chewing gum too loudly. "Wait," I said, and shut the door. "Upstairs," I reported. "For Mr. Vane," I said. "Florist's box. Cash payment." Wolfe's brows drew together faintly. "Bring it." "Carefully." I returned, signed with an illegible flourish, and carried the box upstairs. It was heavier than flowers ought to be. I set it on Wolfe's desk. "Do not open it," Wolfe said to Vane, who had half risen. "Who would send flowers at a time like this?" Vane whispered. "Someone theatrical," I said. Wolfe examined the exterior without touching it. "Archie, gloves." I fetched a pair from the drawer. Wolfe nodded for me to open the lid. Inside lay a neat arrangement of white lilies and pale roses. Their scent rose clean and sharp. Nestled among them was a small envelope. I extracted it carefully and handed it to Wolfe. He slit it with a paper knife. There was a single card. No signature. Wolfe read it once, then again. "Well?" I asked. He handed it to me. In a firm, deliberate hand were the words, "To new ventures. May you drink deeply." Vane made a strangled sound. "That's from my speech," he said. The closing line. Wolfe's eyes lifted slowly. "You are certain?" "Yes. I drafted it yesterday." "And who has seen the draft?" Wolfe asked. "Leonard, Peter, Mrs. Colby." "And now us," I said. Wolfe's gaze returned to the flowers. "Archie, remove one lily, carefully." I did. Now," Wolfe said. "Smell the stem." I brought it to my nose. Nothing unusual beyond the thick sweetness of the bloom. "Cut the stem," Wolfe instructed. I fetched a letter opener and sliced through. Clear sap beaded at the edge. No discoloration, I said. Wolfe nodded faintly. It is unlikely the flowers themselves are weaponized. The message suffices. To frighten me, Vane said. To communicate, Wolfe corrected. The sender knows you are here, knows the content of your prepared remarks, and wishes to reinforce the imagery of drinking. Poison, Vane whispered. Or metaphor, Wolfe said. I replaced the lid loosely. The timing matters, Wolfe continued. The luncheon is underway. If the intent were to poison Mr. Vane there, his absence complicates matters. Instead, we receive this. Meaning the real stage might be here, I said, or that someone wishes us to believe so. Vane's breathing had quickened. What do I do? You remain, Wolfe said. And if they come? Vane asked. Wolfe's expression hardened, a rare shift. Then they will find that my house is not a convenient backdrop for melodrama. The telephone rang. I crossed to it, pulse ticking. Yes? Saul Panzer's voice was as flat as ever. Caledonia Club. Luncheon in progress. Dykes present. Rudd present. No visible disturbance. Anything unusual? I asked. Dykes appeared surprised at Vane's absence. Spoke privately with Rudd for several minutes. Rudd left briefly. Returned. No contact with steward station beyond routine. No tampering with glasses? Not that I observed. Stay put, I said, and hung up. I relayed it. Wolfe nodded once. Then the luncheon was not the chosen arena. Vane stared at the flower box as if it might breathe. Mr. Wolfe, he said hoarsely. If not there, where? Wolfe's gaze moved slowly around the office. The desk, the cabinets, the red leather chair, the single window admitting a winter-gray light. Here, he said quietly. If the phrase was ever meant literally, Mr. Vane, it was not about a club, it was about ritual, and you have just performed one. Vane blinked. Performed what? You accepted coffee in my office, Wolfe said, without hesitation. The room went very still. Vane stared at the empty coffee cup on Wolfe's desk as if it had just confessed to something ugly. What are you saying? He managed. Wolfe's eyes rested on the cup, then lifted to Fritz's absent doorway. Archie, how many cups were prepared? 3, I said. Yours? Mine? His? And mine remains untouched, Wolfe said. That's standard, I said. You don't drink coffee at this hour. Just so? Vane's voice thinned. You think? I think nothing yet, Wolfe said. Archie, the pot. I went downstairs to the kitchen. Fritz was at the stove, a front written across his broad face before I even spoke. Was there anything irregular about the coffee? I asked. Of course not, he snapped. I grind it myself. You insult me. I'm trying not to, I said. Who handled the tray after you prepared it? I did. Directly to the office. No one else. No stops? No. Anyone in the hall? 9. I brought the pot and the remaining cups upstairs. Wolfe indicated Vane's cup. Archie, pour what remains into mine. I did. The liquid was ordinary in color and scent. Wolfe regarded it, then turned to me. Taste it. I raised a brow. You're promoting me. Taste, he repeated. I took a cautious sip. Bitter, hot, unremarkable. Congratulations, I said. If I collapse, you inherit my desk. Wolfe ignored that. Mr. Vane, did the coffee taste unusual to you? No, he said faintly. Nothing at all. Wolfe nodded once. Then if an attempt was made, it was not by crude adulteration. Meaning? I asked. Meaning, Wolfe said, that the ritual may not concern poison at all. Vane swayed between relief and fresh dread. Then what? Wolfe's gaze shifted to the flower box. The message emphasizes drinking. Yet no action has been taken to render a drink lethal. Instead, we are encouraged to anticipate such an act. To frighten me, Vane said. To condition you, Wolfe corrected. For what? I asked. For expectation, Wolfe said. A man who believes he is to be poisoned will scrutinize every glass. He will refuse certain beverages. He will seek safety in controlled environments. Vane's eyes widened slowly. You mean here? Indeed. I felt it settle. Thus, if someone wanted him to avoid the club and stay put, they would need only suggest danger there, Wolfe said. And make this place seem safer, I finished. Vane gripped the arms of the chair. But I came here of my own will. Did you? Wolfe asked quietly. The question hung. You overheard a conversation in which my house was mentioned, Wolfe continued. You interpreted it as the intended scene of your death. Yet instead of avoiding it, you sought refuge in it. Vane swallowed. Because I thought you could protect me. Protection was the bait, Wolfe said. A knock sounded at the office door. Soft, measured. I moved instinctively. Fritz, came his voice from outside. A gentleman insists. I opened the door a crack. Who? He gives no name. Says it concerns the flowers. I glanced at Wolfe. Admit him, Wolfe said. The man who entered was neither delivery boy nor partner. He was thin, pale, with the stoop of someone accustomed to desks. His overcoat was modest, but his expression strained. Mr. Wolfe, he asked. Yes. I'm Peter Rudd. Vane stiffened. Rudd's eyes flicked to him briefly, then back to Wolfe. I believe you've received something intended to cause alarm. You refer to the flowers? Wolfe asked. Yes. You sent them? I asked. No, Rudd said quickly. I came to prevent misunderstanding. Proceed, Wolfe said. Rudd removed his gloves slowly. Mr. Vane has been under considerable strain, and Leonard and I discussed his tendency toward dramatic interpretation of ordinary remarks. Including remarks about toasting his own killer, I said. Rudd's mouth tightened. An unfortunate metaphor. Whose? Wolfe asked. Mine, Rudd admitted. We were discussing Harold's speech. I said he would toast his own venture to death if he insisted on publicizing prematurely. It was a figure of speech. And in Wolfe's place? Wolfe inquired. Rudd hesitated. And Leonard suggested Harold might seek your counsel if he panicked. I remarked that if he did, he would likely dramatize matters there as well. So you anticipated his arrival, I said. Not precisely, but I suspected he might run to you. And the flowers? Wolfe asked. Rudd spread his hands. A tasteless joke, perhaps from someone overhearing fragments. Offices have thin walls. Vane stared at him. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to consider that fear distorts, Rudd said calmly. The Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Rudd, when did you learn Mr. Vane was here? Rudd paused a fraction too long. Mrs. Colby mentioned he had left abruptly. I inferred. You came alone? Wolfe asked. Yes. Without consulting Mr. Dykes? Yes. Wolfe studied him in silence long enough to make the radiator tick seem loud. Mr. Rudd, Wolfe said at last, you are precise in speech. I try to be. Then answer precisely. Did you at any time intend harm to Mr. Vane? No. Did Mr. Dykes? Of course not. Yet you both spoke in language easily interpreted as lethal. Rudd's gaze flickered to Vane. We underestimated his nerves. And perhaps overestimated your own cleverness, I said. Rudd ignored me. Wolfe leaned back. If this is misunderstanding, it is elaborate, a staged conversation, a secretary who guides inquiry, flowers reinforcing a specific phrase. Rudd's composure wavered slightly. I cannot account for every coincidence. Coincidence, Wolfe repeated softly. not the word often used when design is suspected. Vane's breathing had steadied, but his eyes were hard now. If this is all metaphor, why come here at once? Rudd met his gaze. Because if you involve Nero Wolfe, matters escalate. That, Wolfe said, is accurate. Silence pooled again. Then Wolfe spoke, almost conversationally. Mr. Rudd, you have achieved something curious. You have convinced Mr. Vane that he was in mortal danger. You have ensured his absence from a significant luncheon, and you have drawn both partners into my office within an hour. Rudd said nothing. Wolfe's voice cooled. The question that remains is not whether Mr. Vane is to be poisoned. It is what transpired at the Caledonia Club in his absence that required him very much not to be there. Rudd's stillness changed quality. Before, it had been cultivated calm. Now it was calculation. You're implying, he said carefully, that Harold's absence served some purpose. I am observing, Wolfe replied. That events appear aligned toward that outcome. Vane leaned forward. What happened at the club? As if summoned by the question, the telephone rang again. I crossed to it and lifted the receiver. Yes? Saul's voice came through, flatter than usual. Disturbance at Caledonia. Dykes collapsed during main course. My grip tightened. Collapsed how? After drinking. Not fatal. Ambulance called. Rudd not present at table when it happened. He had stepped out earlier. I glanced at Rudd, not who stood motionless by the door. What was he drinking? I asked. Champagne. Served in Harold Vane's customary seat. The room constricted. Stay there, I told Saul. Find out who poured it. I hung up slowly. Wolfe's eyes were on me. Mr. Dykes, I said, has just collapsed at the Caledonia Club after drinking champagne in Mr. Vane's seat. Vane's face went bloodless. Rudd did not move, but something flickered deep in his gaze. Wolfe's voice remained even. Condition? Alive. Ambulance. Ah, Wolfe murmured. Then the toast has occurred, merely with a different participant. Vane stared at Rudd. You said there was no danger. Rudd's composure cracked. I didn't know. You knew enough to come here, I said. Rudd's eyes snapped to me. I came to prevent hysteria. You may have succeeded, Wolfe said softly, but not in the manner intended. Vane rose abruptly. Leonard could die. And if he does, Wolfe said, the narrative will be simple. Mr. Vane feared poisoning, absented himself from the luncheon, and his partner drank from his place. Vane's mouth opened, then closed. You think they'll suspect me? He whispered. It would be convenient, Wolfe said. Rudd's voice sharpened. This is absurd. Harold was here. With me, Wolfe said. Yes, that is verifiable. But public perception is rarely so disciplined. Vane sank back into the chair. I looked at Rudd. You stepped away from the table before the collapse. Rudd's jaw tightened. To take a call. From whom? My broker. Convenient timing, I said. Rudd's restraint thinned. Are you accusing me? I'm admiring the architecture, I said. Wolfe raised a hand slightly and silence fell. Mr. Rudd, he said, if Mr. Dykes believed Mr. Vane would deliver a public endorsement today, and that endorsement did not occur, what changes? Rudd hesitated. Investor confidence. And if instead Mr. Dykes were incapacitated? Wolfe continued. Rudd's gaze hardened. That is speculation. Speculation is often the shadow of intention, Wolfe said. Who benefits if Mr. Dykes is removed from active control? Vane blinked. Peter would manage interim decisions. Rudd shot him a look. As financial advisor, yes, temporarily. And the Baltic acquisition? Wolfe asked. Would proceed, Rudd said tightly. Under revised authority, Wolfe's eyes half closed. Interesting. The telephone rang again. I answered. Yes? Saul. Ambulance left. Dykes conscious but disoriented. Club manager says champagne bottle was opened at table. Poured by steward. No other complaints. Bottle still there? Police have it. Rudd seen near it. Not after pour. I thanked him and hung up. Mr. Dykes lives, I said. But the bottle is with the police. Rudd exhaled, perhaps unaware he had been holding his breath. Wolfe regarded him steadily. Mr. Rudd, your presence here during the collapse is curious. I told you, Rudd snapped. Composure finally fracturing. I came because Harold overreacts. I didn't anticipate this. You anticipated something, Wolfe said quietly. Otherwise, you would have remained at the club. Rudd's silence was answer enough. Vane's voice trembled. If Leonard believes I arranged this, he might, Wolfe said, particularly if he recalls your agitation and absence. I would never, Vane began. Intent is less visible than opportunity, Wolfe said. I felt the pieces tightening. They made you fear poison, I said to Vane. So you'd stay away. And someone ensured Dykes drank from your place, Wolfe added. Rudd's eyes flashed. You can't prove that. Proof, Wolfe said, is a matter of sequence. He leaned forward slightly, the smallest physical concession to urgency I'd seen from him all morning. Consider, he continued, a conversation overheard, perhaps staged, a secretary subtly guiding inference, a luncheon where Mr. Vane's absence alters seating. He's a financial advisor who departs moments before a partner collapses. Rudd's hands clenched. You're constructing a fantasy, he said. On the contrary, Wolfe replied, I am dismantling one. Vane stared between them. Peter, did you? No, Rudd said sharply. I did not poison Leonard. Perhaps not, Wolfe said, but someone intended Mr. Vane to be suspected. Silence pressed in again. I broke it. If the poison was meant for Vane, and Dykes drank it instead. Then the architect miscalculated, Wolfe said. Rudd's voice dropped, or adapted. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Explain. Rudd hesitated, then said, if someone wished to remove Leonard but deflect suspicion, framing Harold would be efficient. And you believe such someone exists? Wolfe asked. Rudd did not answer. Vane's breathing grew ragged. This is madness. No, Wolfe said calmly. This is structure. He turned to me. Archie, telephone Inspector Kramer. Now inform him that events at the Caledonia Club may intersect with matters presently under discussion here. Invite him. You're bringing the police in? Vane said faintly. Yes, Wolfe replied, because the game has shifted from threat to act. Rudd's face went pale. As I reached for the phone, Wolfe spoke once more, softly but with finality. Mr. Rudd, you and Mr. Dykes attempted to control Mr. Vane's movements through fear. Unfortunately for you, fear is imprecise. It has now drawn scrutiny rather than compliance. Rudd met his gaze, something like desperation surfacing. You don't understand, he said. Wolfe's eyes did not waver. On the contrary, he said, I'm beginning to. Inspector Kramer arrived with the kind of velocity that suggested he had abandoned a lunch he valued. His hat was jammed low, his overcoat unbuttoned, and his expression indicated that if anyone had rearranged the universe without consulting him, he intended to object. He stopped just inside the office and took inventory. Wolfe behind the desk, Vane pale and rigid, Rudd drawn tight as wire, and me by the phone. All right, Kramer said. Who's been poisoned? And why am I hearing about it from you instead of the club manager? Because, Inspector, Wolfe said evenly, the poisoning at the Caledonia Club may be an unintended consequence rather than the primary design. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Now start talking. I gave him the essentials. Vane's overheard conversation, the phrases about toasting, the flowers, the luncheon, Dykes's collapse in Vane's customary seat. Kramer listened without interruption, which meant he was storing it for later detonation. When I finished, he turned to Rudd. "You were at the club." "Yes," Rudd said. "So was Leonard Dykes. He collapsed. I left to come here," Kramer cut in. "Why?" "To address a misunderstanding that could have damaged my firm." Kramer's lip curled faintly. "By leaving your partner on the floor?" "An ambulance had been called," Rudd said tightly. Kramer shifted his gaze to Vane. "You missed the luncheon." "Yes." "Because you thought someone was going to poison you." "Yes." Kramer's eyes flicked to Wolfe. "And you told him to stay put." "I required him to remain," Wolfe corrected. Kramer grunted. "Convenient alibi." "For whom?" Wolfe asked mildly. "Sus for him," Kramer said, jerking a thumb toward Vane. Vane flinched. "I didn't." Kramer raised a hand. "Save it. The champagne bottle's being tested. If it's poisoned and Dykes croaks, this gets simple fast." "Simple," Wolfe repeated softly, "is often misleading." Kramer turned back to Rudd. "Where were you when the steward poured?" "At the table. And when Dykes drank?" "I had stepped away briefly." "To do what?" "To take a call," Rudd said. "From whom?" "My broker." "Name?" Rudd supplied it. Kramer jotted it down. Wolfe watched without comment, but I knew the rhythm of his silence. He was waiting for a seam. "Inspector," Wolfe said at last, "permit a question. Was the seating arrangement altered by Mr. Vane's absence?" Kramer frowned. "Club manager said Dykes took Vane's seat because it was closest to the podium." "Ah," Wolfe murmured. Kramer shot him a look. "What's ah?" "It indicates relevance," Wolfe said. Kramer folded his arms. "Spit it out." "Mr. Vane's absence was engineered," Wolfe said calmly. Rudd's head snapped up. "That's absurd." "Is it?" Wolfe asked. "A conversation staged within earshot. Language chosen to suggest poisoning. A secretary nudging inference. Flowers reinforcing imagery, all to ensure Mr. Vane avoided the luncheon." Kramer's gaze sharpened. "Why?" "To place Mr. Dykes in Mr. Vane's seat," Wolfe said. Silence hit hard. Vane's voice was barely audible. "So Leonard would drink what was meant for me." "Or appear to," Wolfe said. Kramer's eyes moved between them. "You're saying the poison was intended for Vane, but Dykes got it by accident." "I am suggesting," Wolfe replied, "that the target may not have been who we assume." Rudd's composure began to crack visibly. "This is speculation layered on paranoia." "On the contrary," Wolfe said. "Consider motive. Who benefits if Mr. Dykes is incapacitated and Mr. Vane is suspected?" Kramer's gaze settled slowly on Rudd. Rudd's voice sharpened. "That's outrageous." "Is it?" I said. "You'd gain interim control. The Baltic acquisition proceeds under your financial direction. Vane looks guilty. Dykes is removed." Rudd's face flushed. "I advised that acquisition. Leonard approved it." "And Mr. Vane hesitated," Wolfe said. Vane nodded weakly. "I wanted safeguards." "Safeguards delay profit," Wolfe observed. Kramer stepped closer to Rudd. "Did you doctor that champagne?" "No." "Did you know it was doctored?" "No." "Did you encourage Vane to believe he was in danger?" "I may have used careless language," Rudd snapped. "That's not a crime." "No," Wolfe agreed. "But manipulation often precedes one." Rudd turned on Vane. "You've always been timid, always afraid to commit." Leonard was tired of it. "And you?" Wolfe asked softly. Rudd's eyes flicked back. "I am practical." "Practical enough," Wolfe said, "to recognize that if Mr. Vane were absent, Mr. Dykes would occupy his position at table. That was coincidence, Rudd insisted. Coincidence, Wolfe repeated. An overworked word. Kramer's jaw tightened. If this bottle tests positive, and we can place you near it. You can't, Rudd said. Wolfe's gaze shifted to me. Archie, when Mr. Rudd arrived here, did he inquire whether Mr. Vane had consumed anything? I thought back. No. He did not ask about Mr. Vane's safety, Wolfe said. Only about misunderstanding. Rudd's lips parted, then pressed thin. A man genuinely concerned about an accidental poisoning, Wolfe continued, would ask first whether Mr. Vane had ingested anything here. Kramer's eyes narrowed further. You knew, Wolfe said quietly, that the danger was not here. Rudd's control finally fractured. You have no proof. Not yet, Wolfe agreed, but we have sequence, motive, and your unfortunate haste. Kramer stepped in close enough that Rudd had to tilt his head back slightly. You're coming downtown, Kramer said. For what? Rudd demanded. For questions, Kramer replied, and for a little patience. As Kramer reached for him, Rudd's composure dissolved entirely. You don't understand, he burst out. It wasn't supposed to be lethal. The room froze. Kramer's grip tightened. What wasn't? Rudd swallowed hard. Just enough to sicken him, to delay, and to force reconsideration. Force whose reconsideration? Wolfe asked softly. Rudd's eyes darted, toward Vane, then away. Leonard's, he said hoarsely. He was pushing too fast. Investors were nervous. If he fell ill, temporarily, authority would shift. We could restructure quietly. And suspicion would fall on Mr. Vane, Wolfe said. Rudd said nothing. Vane stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Kramer's voice was cold. You poisoned your own partner. I didn't mean, Rudd began. You meant control, Wolfe said. Kramer snapped cuffs on Rudd's wrists with efficient finality. As he steered him toward the door, Rudd twisted once, desperate. It would have worked, he said, if he'd stayed away like he was supposed to. Wolfe's eyes were steady. Yes, he said, it nearly did. The door closed behind Kramer and Rudd with a weight that seemed to settle the house back onto its foundation. For a moment, no one spoke. Vane remained seated, staring at the empty space Rudd had occupied. His hands, which had trembled all morning, were now unnaturally still. He said it wasn't meant to be lethal, Vane murmured. Wolfe's eyes rested on him without softness. Men who tamper with poison often comfort themselves with gradations. Vane swallowed. Leonard, will he recover? That depends, Wolfe said, on chemistry and constitution. Inspector Kramer will inform us. I moved to the window and looked down at the street. Kramer's car pulled away, taking Rudd and his careful calculations with it. Vane exhaled slowly. He wanted to sicken Leonard, to take control, and let suspicion fall on me. Yes, Wolfe said, because I hesitated over the Baltic acquisition. Because you hesitated publicly, Wolfe corrected, and because you are predictable. Vane's head jerked up. Predictable. You value caution, you seek counsel, you react strongly to implied threats, Wolfe said. Mr. Rudd exploited those traits. Vane's shoulders sagged. I nearly handed him everything. You handed him nothing, Wolfe said. You came here. And that, I added, ruined his timetable. Vane managed a faint, humorless smile. The telephone rang. I answered. Kramer's voice came through, brisk. Bottle tested preliminary, positive for digitalis derivative. Not enough to kill outright, but enough to cause collapse. Dykes is stable. Charges? I asked. Attempted poisoning. Is conspiracy, if we can tie it. Your friend Rudd's already talking. He's good at that, I said. Kramer grunted. You and Wolfe stay available. We're housebroken, I said and hung up. Mr. Dykes lives, I told them. Vane closed his eyes briefly. Relief washed across his face, followed by something heavier. He'll know, Vane said quietly. About Peter. Yes, Wolfe said. And about me. My suspicion? My hiding in the storeroom? Perhaps, Wolfe said. But he will also know who engineered the event. Vane's gaze drifted to the flower box still on the desk. The flowers were his idea too. Undoubtedly, Wolfe said. Theatrical reinforcement. A reminder of the speech you would not give. Vane leaned forward slightly. He counted on me panicking. He counted on your fear guiding you, Wolfe said. Fear is efficient. And if I had stayed home instead of coming here? Vane asked. Mr. Dykes would still have taken your seat, Wolfe said. The poisoning would have occurred. You would have had no alibi. Vane nodded slowly. I looked at Wolfe. You realized it when the seating came up. When the seating, the language, and the haste converged, Wolfe said. Mr. Rudd's greatest error was impatience. He came here to contain narrative. In doing so, he revealed foreknowledge. And he didn't ask whether Vane had drunk anything, I added. Precisely. Silence settled again, but it was different now. Less taut, more reflective. And Vane rose at last. Mr. Wolfe, I don't know how to... You will compensate me, Wolfe said calmly. That is sufficient. Vane managed a strained laugh. Yes, of course. He hesitated. Leonard and I, this will change everything. Indeed, Wolfe said. Trust, once fractured, rarely resumes its original shape. Vane looked at him searchingly. Do you believe Leonard knew? Wolfe considered. It is possible he was unaware of the specific method. But it is also possible he tolerated aggressive strategy without inquiring too closely. Vane absorbed that. Either way, Wolfe continued, your partnership has been toasted. Vane's mouth tightened. Appropriately. He extended his hand awkwardly. Wolfe did not take it. Instead, he inclined his head. Archie Goodwin, however, is not Nero Wolfe. I shook Vane's hand. After he left, I carried the flower box downstairs and consigned it to the trash with ceremonial satisfaction. When I returned, Wolfe had closed his eyes. Lunch? I suggested. Late, Wolfe said. Fritz entered as if summoned by appetite alone. It is ready. We descended to the dining room. The brownstone felt restored. No longer stage, no longer target. Over roast duck and a burgundy Wolfe approved of, he spoke once. Archie. Observe the elegance of inversion. Mr. Vane feared he would toast his own killer. Instead, the killer nearly toasted his own ambition. That's poetic for you, I said. It is accurate, Wolfe replied. After dessert, back in the office, the afternoon light slanted in pale and orderly. The orchids upstairs would have resumed their silent labor. I settled at my desk. You'll be cited in the papers, I said. I will not, Wolfe said. Inspector Kramer will attribute success to diligent police work. Modesty? I asked. Efficiency, Wolfe corrected. Publicity attracts disturbance. I glanced at the empty chair where Vane had sat that morning. He really believed he was about to die, I said. Yes, and you let him. I allowed him to remain within controlled parameters, Wolfe said. There is a distinction. I grinned. Comforting. Wolfe's gaze drifted toward the window. Men, he said slowly, often prefer to engineer fear rather than face resistance. It is cheaper. And riskier, I said. Indeed. The house was quiet again, the proper kind of quiet, not the anticipatory sort. I picked up my pen. For the record, I said, as if anyone ever suggests I'm about to toast my own killer, I'm switching to milk. Wolfe's eyes closed, a signal of dismissal. "Archie," he said, "do not be absurd. Milk spoils." And with that, the brownstone returned to its rightful occupation. Digestion, orchids, and the comfortable knowledge that, for today at least, no one would be drinking anything unexamined. If the matter had ended there, Wolfe would have been content to let it fossilize into one more example of human impatience. Though unfortunately, impatience has relatives. It was just past 4 when the bell rang again. I checked the panel and saw Harold Vane on the stoop, hat in hand, looking as though he had aged 5 years since lunch. I let him in without commentary. Back upstairs, Wolfe opened one eye as Vane entered. "You return," Wolfe said. "Yes," Vane replied. His voice was steadier than before, but the steadiness had an edge. "Leonard is conscious, and the doctors expect him to recover fully." "That is satisfactory," Wolfe said. Vane nodded. "Inspector Kramer has Peter. He's admitted to introducing the digitalis into a small vial. He claims he meant to add it to Leonard's coffee later in the week, not the champagne." I leaned forward. "Later in the week?" "Yes. He says he brought the vial to the club, intending only to intimidate Leonard into delaying the acquisition. But when I failed to appear, he panicked." "Panicked?" Wolfe repeated, as Vane's mouth tightened. "He says he feared Leonard would suspect something was wrong with me and withdraw the acquisition, so he decided to proceed immediately. He excused himself, slipped the derivative into the open bottle while the steward was distracted." "That is inconsistent with his earlier statement," I said. "Yes," Vane said. "He's revising." Wolfe regarded him steadily. "You did not return merely to report this?" "No." Vane hesitated. There is something else." He removed an envelope from his coat pocket and placed it on Wolfe's desk. "It was delivered to my office an hour ago," he said. "Addressed to me. No return." I felt the old current stir again. "Opened?" I asked. "Yes." Wolfe gestured for it. Vane handed it over. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Wolfe read it silently, then passed it to me. It said, "Control is rarely solitary. Consider who profits most from your fear." No signature. I looked up. "That's friendly." Vane's eyes were sharp now. "Peter couldn't have sent it. He was in custody." "Which narrows authorship," Wolfe said mildly. Vane swallowed. "Leonard read it before I brought it here." "And?" Wolfe asked. "He denied any knowledge." Wolfe's fingers rested on the paper. "Mr. Vane," he said, "did Mr. Dykes appear surprised?" "Yes." "And angry?" "Anger is not evidence," Wolfe murmured. I studied Vane. "You think Leonard knew more?" "I don't know what to think," Vane said. "Sure, but Peter claimed Leonard had pressured him, that the acquisition had to proceed at any cost." Wolfe's eyes sharpened slightly. "Did he?" Vane hesitated. "Leonard is ambitious. That is not the question." "No," Vane admitted. "He did not instruct Peter to poison anyone, but he demanded results." "Results can inspire creativity," I said. Wolfe leaned back. "Let us consider motive anew. If Mr. Rudd acted alone, he risked prison to manipulate temporary authority. If Mr. Dykes knew nothing, and he was merely a target. Yet this note implies shared architecture." Vane's breathing quickened. "You think Leonard knew Peter intended something?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that Mr. Rudd's confession may be incomplete." "Because he's protecting Leonard?" I asked. "Or himself," Wolfe replied. Vane's voice tightened. "Leonard insisted on toasting in my seat. He said it would look united." "That detail," Wolfe said softly, "is significant." I felt the pieces shift again. "At the club," I said slowly, if Dykes wanted to reassure investors about Vane's absence, taking his seat would signal control." "Yes," Vane said. "He said precisely that." And if he knew Peter intended to create a minor incident, Wolfe continued, he might have calculated that temporary illness would evoke sympathy and strengthen resolve. Vane stared. You think he agreed to be sick? Men have endured worse for profit, Wolfe said. I leaned back. But digitalis isn't predictable. And it could have killed him. Which suggests, Wolfe said, either poor coordination or escalating desperation. Vane ran a hand through his hair. Leonard was furious when he learned Peter had used the vial that day. He said it was reckless. Did he say he knew of its existence? Wolfe asked. Vane hesitated. Yes, he admitted quietly. He said he'd warned Peter not to carry it around. The room stilled again. You omitted that earlier, Wolfe said. I wasn't certain it mattered. It matters, Wolfe said. I looked at Vane sharply. So Leonard knew Peter possessed poison. Not poison, Vane protested. He called it leverage. Wolfe's eyes hardened. Leverage, he repeated. Vane's shoulders slumped. I don't want to believe he sanctioned it. Belief is immaterial, Wolfe said. Sequence is not. He leaned forward slightly. If Mr. Dykes knew of the digitalis and its intended use as intimidation, he bears culpability. And if he encouraged a staged illness to manipulate investor perception, he is architect as well as victim. And the note? I asked. Wolfe tapped it lightly. Either Mr. Rudd seeks to implicate his partner indirectly, he said, or Mr. Dykes seeks to redirect suspicion preemptively. Vane's face drained again. Leonard would not— Mr. Vane, Wolfe interrupted gently. You have spent the day discovering what men will do. Silence lingered. What do we do now? Vane asked. Wolfe's gaze moved to the telephone. We do not speculate further, he said. We invite Mr. Dykes. Vane blinked. Here. Yes. He's just out of hospital. Then he may appreciate seated discourse. I grinned despite myself. Round 2? Wolfe's eyes narrowed faintly. No, he said. Round 1, properly understood. He looked at Vane. Telephone Mr. Dykes. Inform him that if he wishes clarity before Inspector Kramer arrives with additional questions, so he will present himself here within the hour. Vane hesitated only a moment before reaching for the phone. As he dialed, I watched Wolfe. The brownstone had been disturbed once by fear and then by ambition. Now it waited for something colder, truth stripped of theatrics. Across the desk, the unsigned note lay quiet, its warning hanging in the air. Control, it suggested, is rarely solitary. Wolfe did not smile. He rarely does when the board reveals a second player. Leonard Dykes arrived just before 6, pale but upright, moving with the careful stiffness of a man who has recently been reminded that his body is not invincible. He declined my offer of assistance on the stairs and entered Wolfe's office without removing his coat, as though unwilling to settle in. His gaze moved first to Vane, then to Wolfe. I understand you requested my presence, he said. I did, Wolfe replied. Be seated. Dykes complied, though the motion cost him. I've already spoken to Inspector Kramer, he said. Peter Rudd acted independently. I had no knowledge he would introduce anything into that bottle. You had knowledge of the vial, Wolfe said evenly. Dykes's jaw tightened. Harold told you. Yes, Wolfe said. Dykes glanced at Vane. I told Peter not to carry that infernal substance. It was intended as a private warning, nothing more. A warning of what? Wolfe asked. That reckless obstruction would not be tolerated, Dykes snapped. The Baltic acquisition required unity. Harold's hesitation threatened months of negotiation. So you permitted your advisor to possess digitalis as persuasion, I said. It was to frighten, not harm, Dykes shot back. Fear is imprecise, Wolfe said. Dykes's eyes flashed. You've made that clear, Wolfe inclined his head slightly. Then we proceed to precision. He gestured toward the typed note on his desk. This was delivered to Mr. Vane after Mr. Rudd's arrest, Wolfe said. It suggests shared control. Dykes looked at the paper without touching it. I did not send that. Did you instruct anyone to? Wolfe asked. No. Did you anticipate Mr. Rudd might implicate you? Wolfe continued. Dykes's gaze hardened. Peter is attempting to salvage his position by spreading blame? Perhaps, Wolfe said. Yet his initial design depended upon Mr. Vane's absence. Dykes did not answer. You insisted on occupying Mr. Vane's seat, Wolfe went on. Yes, Dykes said, to reassure investors. And you were aware Mr. Rudd possessed digitalis that day? I was aware he had it generally. Specifically that day, Wolfe pressed. Dykes hesitated, and in that pause the air shifted. Yes, he said finally. He mentioned bringing it. I told him it was unnecessary. But you did not forbid him, Wolfe said. I'm not his jailer. No, Wolfe agreed. You were his partner in strategy. Vane's voice trembled. Leonard, did you expect him to use it? Dykes turned sharply. No. Did you consider the possibility? Wolfe asked quietly. Dykes's composure thinned. I considered that a mild incident might clarify priorities. Your own illness, I said. He shot me a look. Of course not. But you took Harold's seat, Wolfe said. Yes. And you drank first, Wolfe continued. That is customary. Not obligatory, Wolfe corrected. Dykes's breathing grew shallow. You believed, Wolfe said calmly, that if Mr. Rudd attempted intimidation, it would target Mr. Vane. You calculated that his absence rendered any such act void. Dykes said nothing. Instead, Wolfe continued, Mr. Rudd escalated. Whether through panic or ambition, he introduced the substance into the champagne. And I paid the price, Dykes said bitterly. Did you? Wolfe asked softly. Dykes blinked. You survive, Wolfe said. Sympathy accrues, and investors perceive you as victim of internal sabotage by an overzealous advisor and a wavering partner. Vane stiffened. You think he benefits? I think, Wolfe said, that miscalculation does not preclude advantage. Dykes leaned forward despite his discomfort. Are you accusing me of poisoning myself? I'm suggesting, Wolfe replied, that you tolerated a weapon in your circle and assumed control over its deployment. That assumption proved faulty. Dykes's lips pressed thin. You wish to force Harold's compliance, Wolfe said. A demonstration of vulnerability might have accelerated that. Not at risk of death, Dykes snapped. Digitalis dosage is uncertain, Wolfe said, unless carefully measured. Silence stretched. Vane stared at Dykes, realization dawning slowly and painfully. You told him not to carry it, Vane whispered, but you didn't stop him. Dykes's shoulders sagged a fraction. I expected him to use it as threat only. And if Harold had been present? Wolfe asked. Dykes's gaze flickered. He would have understood the seriousness. In other words, Wolfe said, you permitted the possibility that your partner might be frightened into compliance by proximity to poison. Dykes did not respond. Wolfe's voice cooled. That is conspiracy in all but administration. Dykes looked up sharply. You cannot prove that. No, Wolfe agreed. Inspector Kramer may struggle as well. Intent without execution is elusive. Vane's voice was raw. You were willing to let him scare me. Dykes met his gaze. I was willing to end dithering. With poison in the room, Vane said. Dykes closed his eyes briefly. Wolfe folded his hands. Mr. Dykes, he said. Control pursued through fear corrodes its holder first. You misjudged Mr. Rudd's ambition and Mr. Vane's predictability. The result is neither unity nor profit, but exposure. Dykes exhaled slowly. "What do you want?" he asked. Nothing," Wolfe said. "The law will address Mr. Rudd's act. Your role, though ethically compromised, may evade formal sanction. That is not my concern." "Then why summon me?" Dykes demanded. Wolfe's eyes were steady. "Because Mr. Vane required clarity." Silence fell again, heavy but clean. Vane straightened slowly. "I will withdraw from the Baltic acquisition," he said, "and from our partnership." Dykes's head snapped up. "Harold." "No," Vane said. "If control requires poison in the briefcase, I decline." Dykes's expression shifted from anger to something like weary resignation. "You're overreacting," he muttered. "Perhaps," Vane said quietly. "But I prefer fear to be earned honestly." Wolfe inclined his head faintly. Dykes rose with visible effort. "You've achieved your drama," he said to Wolfe. "I hope you're satisfied." "I'm seldom satisfied," Wolfe replied, "but I'm rarely surprised." Dykes left without further word. When the door closed, Vane remained standing, as though uncertain whether to collapse or applaud. "You have been toasted twice today," Wolfe said mildly. "Once in absence, once in revelation." Vane managed a thin smile. "And I survived both." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Learn from that." Vane nodded, then extended his hand again. This time, Wolfe accepted it briefly. After he departed, I looked at Wolfe. "So," I said, "the man who toasted his own killer." Wolfe leaned back, eyes half closed. "No," he said. "So the man who nearly mistook fear for destiny." I considered that. "And dinner?" I asked. Wolfe's eyes opened. "Archie," he said, "see that the champagne remains sealed." I grinned. In the brownstone, order reasserted itself, not because men were virtuous, but because their ambitions had been exposed to light. And for today, that was sufficient. Morning in the brownstone is ordinarily sacred. Wolfe with his orchids, Fritz with his reverent clatter in the kitchen, and me with the newspapers and a tolerance for headlines. The day after a case concludes, however, the air carries a faint aftertaste, like champagne left uncorked too long. Inspector Kramer arrived before noon. He did not remove his hat. "All right," he said without preamble. "Rudd signed a full statement, attempted poisoning. Claims Dykes knew he had the digitalis, but didn't authorize using it that day. Says Dykes wanted pressure, not collapse." Wolfe, they freshly descended from the plant rooms, settled into his chair with deliberation. "And you believe him?" Wolfe asked. Kramer scowled. "I believe he's trying to reduce his own exposure, but we can't prove Dykes directed the act. Knowing about a vial isn't the same as ordering it poured." "Quite," Wolfe said. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "You think otherwise?" "I think," Wolfe replied, "that Mr. Dykes engineered an atmosphere in which poison became a viable instrument. Whether he anticipated its use that afternoon is less certain." Kramer grunted. "That won't hold in court." "I did not suggest it would," Wolfe said. Kramer looked at me. "And your friend Vane?" "Dissolving the partnership," I said, "with impressive speed." Kramer snorted. "Good for him." He jammed his hat more firmly on his head. "Rudd goes up on charges. Dykes walks unless something new surfaces." "Nothing new will surface," Wolfe said calmly. "Mr. Dykes is too intelligent to leave residue." Kramer studied him for a moment, then turned and left without farewell. The door closed, and quiet returned. I glanced at Wolfe. "You're letting Dykes go?" "I am not law enforcement," Wolfe said, "nor am I moral arbiter beyond the confines of my threshold." "You could have pressed harder," I said. "For what purpose?" Wolfe asked. "His partnership has dissolved. His advisor is indicted. His investors will hesitate. And he has been chastened publicly and privately." "Not jailed," I said. Justice, Wolfe replied, is not always synonymous with incarceration. I leaned back, considering. The bell rang again. I checked the panel and saw Harold Vane, looking less hunted than before. When I admitted him, he carried no flowers. He entered the office with a steadier step. I wanted to inform you personally, he said, that the dissolution papers are signed. Leonard did not contest them. Wolfe inclined his head. Vane continued. He admitted, privately, that he had allowed Peter too much latitude. He believed fear would compel efficiency. And now? Wolfe asked. Now he understands that fear invites unpredictability. Wolfe's eyes flickered with faint approval. Vane hesitated. I owe you more than a fee. You owe me precisely the agreed amount, Wolfe said. Vane managed to smile. Then allow me a final question. When did you know Peter intended to act that day? When he arrived here, Wolfe said. Vane blinked. So soon? Yes. A man genuinely concerned that his associate might be poisoned would first inquire about that associate's condition. Mr. Rudd asked only about misunderstanding. His priority was narrative, not safety. And Leonard? Vane pressed. Wolfe folded his hands. Mr. Dykes's culpability was subtler. He believed he controlled the board. He misjudged his knight. Vane absorbed that slowly. I nearly allowed myself to be maneuvered, he said. Yes, Wolfe agreed. You were predictable. Vane smiled ruefully. You've mentioned that. Predictability is not weakness, Wolfe said. It becomes weakness when others chart it without your consent. Vane nodded. I've learned, he said quietly, that I prefer caution without coercion. A sound preference, Wolfe replied. After he left, I watched the door for a moment. Happy ending? I asked. Wolfe's brows rose slightly. Define happy. No one died. The poisoner's caught. The partnership's over. Mr. Dykes's ambition remains intact, Wolfe said. Merely redirected. And Vane? We'll cultivate spine, Wolfe said. Perhaps without assistance next time. I grinned. You're optimistic. I am observant, Wolfe corrected. Fritz entered then, announcing luncheon with solemn dignity. Over braised veal and a Riesling Wolfe found adequate, I revisited the case aloud. So the phrase, toast his own killer, was metaphor weaponized, Wolfe said. And the real target wasn't the drink, I continued, but the seating. Yes. They engineered Vane's fear to alter his position. That shift created opportunity. Correct. And Rudd escalated beyond the agreed intimidation. Or beyond Dykes's expectation, Wolfe said. I sipped my water cautiously. You never really thought Vane would be poisoned here, I said. Wolfe gave me a look. I thought it possible, he said, which is why I controlled ingress. But you suspected the luncheon once Saul called. I suspected the luncheon once Mr. Rudd arrived prematurely, Wolfe said. Haste is confession in motion. After coffee, mine, not his, we returned to the office. The afternoon light settled across the desk, illuminating nothing more sinister than correspondence. I picked up my pen. For the record, I said, if anyone ever suggests we host a celebratory toast here, I'm inspecting every bottle twice. Wolfe's eyes closed briefly. Archie, he said, the lesson is simpler. Oh? Never permit another man to define the occasion of your fear. I considered that. Outside, the city moved as it always does, ambitious, impatient, convinced of its own control. Inside the brownstone, the orchids breathed, the files rested, and the glasses remained sealed. The man who nearly toasted his own killer had discovered that the true danger was not in the cup, but in the hand that guided it. Wolfe leaned back, satisfied enough. Sir, and I made a note to keep an eye on the champagne.